Hello, everyone. Hello. How's everyone doing?
Pretty good. How about you, Katie?
Good, thanks.
I'm
Very
great.
excited. Liza Featherstone, the old, not the old, one of the Lunts of Blaine, as they call her on, I was going to say like an old standard. What is it? An old
standard, like
standard
a song, like would be like a song you always sing.
Yes,
yeah.
But in a good way. And Greg Goldberg, who I've known for years, but is making his Katie Halper show debut. So things are really about to change.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And welcome everyone watching. And I'm really excited. I think it's on, right? Okay, yes, it is. I'm really excited to have these guests because I've been wanting to talk about this issue. And then lo and behold, Liza Featherstone wrote a piece on this. And Greg and I were texting about this, and we're considering talking about it publicly. Before we get into that, though, I just want to introduce the guests. Liza Featherstone, a journalist, author, and her latest piece is in Jacobin, and it is called "The Left Needs to Stop Falling for Absurd Sex Panics." Greg Goldberg is a professor of sociology and the chair of the sociology department now at Wesleyan.
Yes, unfortunately.
How did that happen? That's amazing.
Everybody gets a turn.
Yeah, they make everyone do it.
Yeah.
And
who writes and you're also an author, also a musician from the band the Ballet, and people may know that my first song for the Katie Halper Show theme song, you may know, you may not know, but it was by the Ballet.
Trivia.
And a great new album. Yeah, my favorite song is Looking for, what is it?
Looking,
yeah. The refrain of which, or the chorus, is "What are you looking for?" It's really good.
A Grinder reference, as it were.
Oh, that's so appropriate. Okay. And your forthcoming book is about, what would you say it's about?
About sort of the ins and outs of casual anonymous sex, particularly from a queer perspective, kind of mingling some queer theory in there with personal reflection, I guess.
Nice.
Sounds great.
So like not single and willing to mingle?
So yeah, all the things that Alex Morse was probably not
doing. Sadly,
yeah.
I know.
Right.
Would love it. So the irony is that's like you mean, Greg, I'm sure you both of you are, I'm sure, willing, and able to launch a really robust defense of sex positivity and the rejection of heteronormativity. But unfortunately, or fortunately, Alex Morse is pretty. You don't really have to do that for him.
Yeah, that's part of what is so funny about this whole situation.
Yeah.
because, go ahead.
No, keep going. Sorry.
Well, maybe you want to like frame the issue, and then
yes, but I just realized I'm a big hypocrite because I'm not actually wearing my my mic is not. Hold on, let's see audio. Let me just switch this to an actual headphones. Okay, now that changes everything. Can you guys still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, great. So yeah, Liza, do you want to, since you wrote this great piece at Jacobin, would you mind setting up the story?
Sure. So Alex Morse, it was mayor of Holyoke, Massachusetts, which is not a very large or well-known city, and he's 31. He has been the mayor of Holyoke since he was 22. And he's the, I'm sure there are criticisms of him politically that could be made, but he's the kind of good progressive that groups like Justice Democrats, the Squad Makers, were backing him. And he supported Medicare for All. He supports Medicare for All and a Green New Deal, and those kinds of basic things that progressives have really kind of come together around lately. So he was challenging just the kind of corrupt centrist Democrat that we all love to hate. A guy named Richie Neal, who is, and he's like fully funded by the healthcare industry for his service past and hopefully not future in resisting Medicare for all. He's like lots of money from one percenters and financial and securities firms, like real estate, all the actors that we the left spend our nights and days trying to destroy, right? And then he was also, there were accusations against Richard Neal too that he of pay to play with donors, sort of letting himself get wined and dined by donors who had legislative interests, coming, who had economic interests in bills that were coming before him. Power dynamics.
Yeah, seriously.
So in this landscape of sort of clear good guy versus bad guy, the college Democrats, right, of the University of Massachusetts, write a letter to and they actually can't get major media outlets interested in it for quite a while, but so they eventually give it to the University of Massachusetts newspaper, the Daily Collegian, and in it they make a couple of allegations against Alex Morse. These include that he matched on Tinder and on dating apps. They don't say which one, but we assume Tinder, Grindr. But then he had matched on dating apps with students as young as 18. Note the innuendo, but also that is the legal adult age to match with somebody or do whatever you want with them. So that's just bracketing the sort of weird innuendo around what is a normal human thing, and that he had they also alleged that he had used college Democrat events to meet people, and then he had, wait for it, DM'd them on his Instagram or added them to his close friend story. So lots of really.
Which I don't even know what that is. Like a close friend's story.
It's like when you post something on Instagram, it lets you. I don't know if it's a live thing or in regular, but it lets you choose who you show it to.
Okay.
And it's like everyone or close friends. I've never really used it. I'm not big on Instagram.
I love Instagram, but I don't really like the story because I'm an old person. So I just like to post things.
So it's actually ageist.
Yes.
Let's add that to it somehow.
Yes. Well, the letter actually said things which in our generation are supposed to connote intimacy. So it's even kind of framed to be like, you olds can't really understand how abusive this is.
Yeah.
And they also alleged he had sexual relationships with students, including at the university where he had taught, which was the University of Massachusetts. Right. There were no allegations of assault or harassment or having sex with minors, like people younger than the age of consent, or there were no allegations of having even a banal crime like having sex with his students.
Right.
He was not even charged with that. So he was being charged with chatting with people in ways that made them feel uncomfortable.
Right.
So it was very vague, and then I feel like I'm talking too long, so then there was this whole storm about this, including on the left and among liberals and among the left, and there was so much hand-wringing about the abuses of power. Several and this was not just like an internet outrage. There were some real political consequences. So a number of people who had endorsed him unendorsed him or put their endorsements on hold. Jamal Bowman, for example, put his endorsement of Alex Morse on hold. The local Sunrise Movement chapter, Sunrise Western Massachusetts, wrote a torturous statement about that they wanted to acknowledge the harm that Alex had caused. And let's just a reminder again, what the letter accuses him of does not include anyone saying I was harmed.
Right.
I mean, so that's also important. So so this seemed like a crazy homophobic smear trafficking in stereotypes about gay men as predatory, and but also just like what a case study in the left losing track of what's important. I mean, this is like the offenses that this guy is accused of are making people feel uneasy, which I'm sure we've all done, for one way or another. And what's at stake is, I mean, you could get this guy in the House, who supports Medicare for all and the Green New Deal, as opposed to this like extremely corrupt tool of the healthcare industry and every other industry. So it seemed. So I wrote this column yesterday, defending Alex Morse, assuming that the things he was accused of were more or less true, right? And just saying, look, this is really the left shouldn't fall for this kind of voyeuristic or homophobic like scandal, and we really need to get a grip and basically be more disciplined. So I wrote this and I sent it to my editors and they didn't put it up yet. And then Ryan Grimm in The Intercept then breaks this story that the college Democrats fabricated this whole thing. One of them really wanted a job with Richie Neal, and they invited Alex Morse to an event. He had only been to one event during his whole campaign, one college Democrat event, rather than a pattern, as they had implied in their letter. And then after the event, somebody, after the event, they entrapped him with a student, like DMing him on Instagram and getting him to be like chatty and friendly. But it is also, if that's a pickup, it is really like the most wholesome pickup I've ever seen. I mean, he was just like, hey, like nice meeting you. Like how's your day been going? What are you up to? Like, I mean, it was just like there was nothing even. I mean, we'd be here to defend him if it was.
I know, exactly. That's the irony.
It wasn't even.
Right.
And so then like I had to like, luckily my column hadn't gone up yet, so I had to like rewrite it, not even defending him of this lurid behavior, but instead just being even more condemnatory toward the left for having bought into this this completely made up situation.
Right. Yeah. It's so there are like a couple of levels, right? Because you could have someone who did something disqualifying who was then set up And you could have
Right.
someone who was then subjected to homophobic smears, and we would still have to grapple with, oh, well, what do we do? Because he did something disqualifying. But in this case, it's not disqualifying at all. And it's very far from anything remotely. I mean, I've seen some people say if you're on faculty, if you're an adjunct, just don't date any students, which, okay, but that's not, first of all, it's not the policy.
Like in the world?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know what the radius is.
Yeah, like in all, they implied that there is something sleazy about other students in the 5 college.
Right.
Area.
Well, that's the other thing. It's like, we're not even talking about one college. We're talking about the 5 college consortium. So like, you're really going to put all of these people off limits? Like, who are you left to date?
I mean,
you're young and
he's a young person and he's gay. I mean, he's going to need he's going to be limited to men, you know, within an age group.
Well,
many of them are going to be attending a university.
Right.
I think that's almost a little defensive still. I would want to say, so what if he wants to date college students?
Well, I completely agree with that, but also like this is not a part of a very I mean, you know, it's not a dense metropolitan area.
Right.
Like, it literally is a college area. Like, it's called the 5 colleges because that's what there is there. 5 colleges.
Right. Yeah.
So no, I absolutely, he has a right to date college students, even if he's in Paris. But but it's just a particularly, it seems particularly, it's not like, you know, we can see from this that he has a college student.
Yeah, he has a thing. Yeah, he has a thing. He has to go out of his way. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So Greg, I want to hear your thoughts, but do you want to we can either hear your thoughts and then go through the actual, because there's an interesting discussion we can have about kind of larger issues. And then maybe we should just, for comedic purposes, go through what he actually was busted doing. Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
So here's what happened, right? We now have these chats. So on October 5th, Morse, and by the way, in the letter, there's a lot of use of like passive voice, and it's kind of like a hodgepodge of different accusations. Yeah. And Liza, as you pointed out, the person he's accused of using his power against, abusing his power with, is someone who didn't know he was a mayor. So it's not really clear how you could do that.
A very strange example.
Yeah.
Whereas a student hooked up with him allegedly, although we think this probably also didn't happen since everything else didn't really happen.
Right. Yeah.
But allegedly, a student hooked up with him and then found out about later that he was the mayor and felt uncomfortable.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I mean, very effective and manipulative use of your status as a mayor.
Really sneaky. Yeah, really sneaky. Yeah. So here's what we have. We have on October 5th, Morse attended a College Dems event at a local community college. Neil, his opponent, also appeared and was introduced by Ennis, who was at the same time enrolled in a journalism class Neil taught at UMass Amherst. Neil later told Ennis he was impressed by the event. Ennis claimed in the chat. Morse sat on a panel with Abramson. Abramson's a student. After the event, Morse reached out to Abramson on Instagram to say it was a pleasure meeting. The two had previously matched on Tinder, Ennis said in the chats, but had never met up. To match on Tinder means both parties must swipe in the same direction in order to begin a conversation. I love the idea, by the way, of Ryan Grimm like checking with his editors. Like, is this correct about Tinder? You have to do that. So then we have a text message, right? Like a screenshot that this guy Abramson, the student, took a screenshot of his phone, right? And here's how he introduced it. Here's how he prefaced it. Not overt, but it's very clear he's not talking to me for no reason. And then the exchange is
double negative, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. So let's let's flesh it out. Not overt, but it's clear he is talking to me for a reason. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. That's the suggestion. So here's what we have. The bait, the jail bait or whatever, the college bait. Abramson says, right? Thank you. Good to see you too. Smiley face.
I think that, by the way, that smiley face is particularly flirty.
It's
not the regular smiley face.
Right.
If I got
yeah.
that, if I got that smiley face from somebody, and if I was into them, I'd be like really excited, and
Yeah.
if I wasn't, I'd be like, oh yeah, I better
Exactly.
like ignore this for a little while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't break that down, actually.
Yeah.
Given the exegesis he does
Well,
for
the
rest of it.
Okay, but yeah, go ahead.
So then Morse, the perv that he is, the hound, the college student hound that he is, says, "How's the rest of your weekend?"
Oh,
And then
depravity.
the depravity. And then Abramson goes, "Pretty good. I went home last night to surprise my mom for her birthday. HBU, and that means how about you for the youths, for the non-youths." And then here's where Morse gets really dark.
You note that the youth has asked a question, so he is inviting.
You're
Morse
right. There's banter.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's banter.
Yeah.
It's banter positive.
Very banter positive.
Right?
Very banter inviting. He's
very
asking
banter inviting.
for it.
He's asking for it.
Yeah.
So imagine, in fact, what we should do is we should go back and analyze them the way that Abramson analyzed, like Morse's status, Morse's comments. It's obvious he's not just, what did he say? Not overt, but it's very clear he's not asking him questions for no reason. Anyway.
Right.
So,
right.
Oh, that's nice. So here's where Morse responds. Oh, that's nice. How was that? I had an event to go to last night to speak, then had a wine tasting party at a friend's house. Now I'm in North Adams about to march in a parade. Okay. So that's all he wrote back. And then Abramson annotates it and says, like, read that message. Also, don't mind me totally leading him on.
Which is absolutely the case. I mean, but it's so funny because Alex Morse's response is almost like, if you were trying to hit on him, you wouldn't necessarily feel that encouraged by that. It's very dry information. It's not very personal. It doesn't follow up by being like, next time I'll take you, or like anything like that. It's just like this is like a list of my activities in a very neutral tone.
It's like, do you know how gay men talk to each other online? Like, we are dirty, like dirty.
I've heard a lot of gay men saying that.
This is like a PTA meeting transcripts.
Like people are like, "Oh, this is so wholesome.
Yeah,
like, we'd love to."
Greg, were you disappointed?
I was. I mean, I thought the receipts would have something. Something that you could take as an indication of any sexual or romantic interest.
Right.
If there was interest there, I don't want to see what their first date is like.
Yeah, right.
Snooze fest.
Right.
Drinking tea.
I mean, are they going to play mini golf?
Yeah.
It's really, this is a very unpromising. I mean, it could be promising for some other kind of relationship, but as a sexual relationship, it doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's really ridiculous, and that was, and it was like almost like out of a movie. It was like, how overt and stupid are they? They're like, this will sink his campaign. Like, why are these people putting it in writing?
I know they're such amateur kids.
So the awkward thing here, I think, is that like we see kind of a clash between like the survivor supporting movement, and then the queer movement, and those things are obviously not monoliths, and there's overlap. But it's like, this wasn't, what made this really frustrating is that it wasn't just like centrist, dem, careerist hacks doing it. It was like, they're actually people whose, I think, hearts are in the right places.
Oh yeah, I mean, like these organizations and people who unendorsed him, and I assume that they feel really bad now and are going to climb back onto the campaign wagon. But yeah, I mean, that was what was really important about it in a way.
Right.
Was that it exposed. I mean, the left is just very vulnerable here for two reasons. I mean, one is that since the left is part of the rest of society, there is homophobia and sexism, and people get sexually harassed, and so there's always, so people are sort of always attuned
Right.
to those things happening, and that there could be if people say this is abusive, maybe it was, because
Right.
people on the left are very attuned to the cruelties of the world. But then on the other hand, it's also that we do tend in our own special way on the left to get caught up in the same sex panics that the rest of society gets caught up in, and we don't tend to have as critical a perspective on them as we do about a lot of the other things, that all the other dynamics of how our society works. So I just interviewed Joanne Wipajewski about this. She has a very good book, which, Katie, you should have her on the show. And her book is What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Me Too. And and it collects her essays from the last couple decades about sex panics, which she's been writing about since the 90s. And I think she's right that that just as this is just as this is something that happens in the larger culture, it is something that the left gets caught up in too, and I think that we should have a more critical perspective. I think when these things emerge, we should be like, we should be very focused on what trying to get to the truth, and not being so attracted to the moral condemnation of it. But I think it's very seductive, though, especially for on the internet. It's Roger Lancaster, who's also written about these kinds of moral panics, calls it a poisoned solidarity, where, like the sort of enjoyment that we get in coming together to condemn somebody. But when, and so that's particularly terrible in all the different ways it happens, whether it's like the daycare scandals of the 80s and 90s, or the Catholic priests, or all of these things. But then I think then it can be particularly destructive for the left, because it can be used to divide our movements like this, especially by cynical people who know that it will. Like, I could just see these college Democrats being like, "Oh yeah, they'll lose their minds about this." We say he made people uncomfortable. Like that. Like, is that it's like, if you were thinking about how to mess with the left, you would definitely be like, "Oh, I'm going to create a big old moral panic having something to do with sex." Like, you just would. I mean, and the FBI did that in the 60s during COINTELPRO. It was like, it found what the vulnerabilities were. Like, how can we really get people to freak out?
Wasn't that hard with Martin Luther King, for being honest? But like
and they would do it by creating sex scandals or racism scandals. I mean, and they would see that, like, in the same way that because there are because there are sex inequalities on the left, because there are always power dynamics between
and we're
people,
sensitive to them in the way the right isn't.
To them. Like, we're gonna go crazy with something like this. But I would say that that perhaps we should keep our heads and think and keep in perspective that a lot of this stuff is pretty personal. I mean, a lot of us do stuff that we wouldn't necessarily want to have be public. And if we're going to be democratizing our politics in this way and bringing in the kinds of people that didn't used to run for office, like regular people who have done other things, or have regular lives. I mean, we're going to have to be a little more realistic about what is what is an okay human error. So again,
this was I was actually even a little disappointed by Morse's apology. I was hoping that he would just kind of say, this is completely acceptable behavior, run of the mill for human sexual interactions, and
vanilla for gay.
Yeah, stop clutching your pearls,
Right.
like get a life, nothing to see here.
Yeah,
I think we're not yet in the kind of moment where he could get away with that. I think that it's so. I would have liked to see that too, but I don't think he would have won the Democratic primary if he had said that.
Yeah,
I think it's like it's too much of a cross panic on the liberals and the left, and people would be too upset if he seemed to be taking it lightly.
Yeah.
That's our job.
Yeah, I actually thought that he was pretty so we interviewed him. I don't usually say this in advance, but you'll see tomorrow it's coming out. Matt Taibbi and I interviewed him for Useful Idiots, and he's like a total mensch of a guy and like amazing. And I actually thought that the way he talked about it, I've often said this, that like the worst thing about, the nice silver lining of being straight for me is that like, at least before, I never had to talk about, like, if you don't have to come out, you don't have to talk about sex and yourself.
Right.
And I was like, wow, he didn't have to do this. Like, he could have just said it's personal. Let's not be moral. Let's not be puritanical. Let's not be the moral majority or policing behind doors of activity. Bedroom activity. But he actually said, he's like, I have sex with men. There's nothing to be ashamed of. So like, I think for a politician, while I get your disappointment, Greg, I actually think for a politician, he was pretty like bold. Most people wouldn't even talk about the sex part. It would just be like personal, relationship, romantic.
And I was also thought it was great that he did imply that it was homophobic. That
he did,
that it was a homophobic smear, and he did it in a very polite way.
Yeah,
but he definitely introduced that idea, which I think is if this thing is making any contribution to the discourse, I think that was an important one.
Right. Yeah.
It does. I mean, it makes me sort of curious about how to end this. The moralism that seems to be attracting at least part of the left. I think that was part of the motivation behind my disappointment with him. I'm like, if more politicians sort of owned something like promiscuous, casual, anonymous sex, would it be like being gay was before? Something you couldn't say and be electable. We need, I think, more public figures to come out and just not sort of, even though I hear that it might make somebody less electable.
Right.
No, I think you're right. I think it does. I think it does have to happen. And I do think that the tone of his statement was at least a little bit on the, that this is really pretty. The way that I date and meet people is pretty normal in gay culture.
I think so, yeah.
Like I think he definitely strongly implied that. But you're right. It wasn't the ringing.
Right.
None of your business.
Right. No. Right. But I thought it was pretty close, honestly, especially for someone running. I also thought that. It's funny. I think that like we got to find someone else to do that, because from what I can tell, he just isn't that type of guy. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, Greg, you may have to find someone else, or maybe you can run for office and be more disruptive than he was.
That's. I don't know. I think that I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if he had at some point dated or had sex with
Right.
somebody. He's 31 years old. So,
Right.
I mean, perhaps they're going to try to come back with something that
With more receipts.
that is actually true,
Right.
because this is not the FBI. These are the college Democrats.
Right.
And they may be just doing this in a very amateurish way.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm glad we're all on record that even if he did actually at some point flirt with somebody,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the story, I think, is about the way that they tried to craft allegations from nothing, not necessarily exonerating him. Although I should also say, as a college professor on Grindr in a small New England college town, for myself, and I would imagine for somebody like him, people are so careful, because how small this world is, and you really don't want to get in trouble.
Right.
Like there's so much that can go wrong there. I would actually be surprised if they had anything on him. Given that he seems to be pretty conscientious about it.
Right.
Yeah.
As many of us are.
Yeah. So you're saying it says Wesleyan, which is my alma mater. It's a little different, right? Because you're the chair of a department.
Yeah.
This guy was an adjunct. And again, it was there's a 5-college consortium. So, and UMass Amherst, where he was teaching, does not have a policy against dating students. You're not supposed to date your own students who you teach, which I think is a pretty reasonable standard. I mean, we could debate that and be subversive, we could critique it, but I think that's a pretty straightforward.
I can't imagine that
policy. Yeah,
I think it is very common, and I can't imagine that anyone would actually want to have somebody in class that they were sleeping with.
I know.
What a nightmare.
I know.
Total nightmare that would be.
You're like, do you know how hard it is to ghost someone when they're a student? I'm just kidding. I don't want to ghost anyone, but yeah.
It's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
I think I was talking with my friend Jonathan Cutler, who's also in the sociology department at Wesleyan, about the Wesleyan policy. And I think both of us were unclear where it stands now. I think the last I heard was that it's prohibited to have any kind of sexual or romantic relationship with a student in your class, and that it's strongly discouraged to have any kind of intimate or sexual relationship with a student at the school. I don't think they formally prohibited it, although I don't even really think that's what the issue here is, at least in the way that the story has been spun. Nobody is alleging that he had any kind of relationship or sexual encounter or even a sexual conversation with a student in his class. So it's not
that doesn't come up at all, and that is like the only thing that would even be ill-advised of all of these actions.
And
it's the only thing.
I've been really surprised at some of the online response, especially on Twitter, how much of it has focused not on the policy or bureaucratic issue, but simply that some people seem to be outraged that a professor would have a relationship with a student anywhere.
Isn't that amazing?
Not at your institution, which I think is what raises this sex panic issue.
Right. Well, you know what I think is interesting is I actually think that there's some people for whom there's definitely homophobia, there's definitely sex panic tropes, but I actually think there are a lot of people who are up in arms who would be up in arms if it were not a same-sex situation, and who would be if it were an older man, or not even if it were a man adjunct and a woman student. And this is what I think is interesting. And you said that you quoted someone who talked about the poisoned solidarity, and I think there's a solidarity of condemnation. And you really think, and I get where it comes from. There, as you were saying before, there is so much abuse of power. There's so many people who are predatory and all that. So I get where it comes from. But it does wind up being I think biting us in the ass, and it's infantilizing also. It's Yeah, and I do think what's interesting is that I actually think like what's really frustrating is that there are people who are, I think there are some people who are really sex positive and on whom like moral panics and sex panics would not work, but who think that the way to be a good ally is to just have the back of anyone. And you know, I've seen this, I've thought about this a lot in the Me Too discussion, and obviously, well, not obviously, I think it's fully possible. In fact, it is possible to believe in the tenets of Me Too, and also like not kind of stand by these accusations or the framing of it, right? And like I do think, you know, I remember I was pretty upset by the Aziz Ansari discussion because I do think that there really is, well, there's a lot of stuff. There's like we wind up, I think, trivializing sexual violence or sexual assault or sexual it doesn't have to be like, for, you know, it could be a power dynamic, abuse of power. And I'm also not on, like, I think what Bill Clinton did was an abuse of power. Like, I think that there is a spectrum. And I think the left, sometimes we don't know how to deal with that because the right has done that so much in the past. So we're just kind of like figuring out our way. But there is a bandwagonish and a knee-jerk reactionism that's like pretty scary. And it's weird when it comes in this direction, because again, it would be easier if we were just like puritanical reactionaries, because then it's very straightforward.
It seems like one of the slippages here is that
that's what she said.
Abuse of power is different from just there simply being a power differential between people. This Oscar Wilde quote that has been kind of thrown around a little bit in the past few days since the scandal broke, I'm fond of something like, everything is about sex except sex, which is about power.
Yeah.
And I think this desire to like somehow get rid of all power in sex is really strange and misguided, and I'm tempted to psychoanalyze it, frankly, as some repressed desire for the very thing that's being disavowed. It just strikes me as really suspicious.
You're going to get Foucauldian on us?
I think it's, I think that's exactly right, and I think some of it is, so sometimes these kinds of panics or these kinds of fixations seem like a giant projection in a way. I mean, you know, like that we're sort of all aware that, you know, we have sex under capitalism, where you know, we have vastly different amounts of power depending on who has access to more wages, more wealth, more property, right? And we all have sex in that context. And we know it's not okay. It would be better if, you know, we related to each other under freer circumstances, right? And similarly, like heterosexuality. Generally, one person is a man, one person is a woman. Not to be all second wave about it, but generally, the man has in certain ways more social power, and so that's, you know, feminists used to actually critique what a crazy sexual arrangement that is, right? But we sort of lost, but we've sort of assimilated these really large inequalities within which sexuality exists, and then the sort of the moral panic of these small power differences, I think, is kind of a projection, you know, that we can't quite deal with the big ones that we can't solve, so we're going to get really mad at this guy who may or may not have texted that student.
Right. I also think there's I think I said this last night, mission creep with Me Too, where it's like, I get where it comes from. It comes from a good place often, but like if you have an asshole boss Like that's not the same. I don't as a Me Too situation. Like lots of people are assholes, and we can deal with that, and we can even politicize that, and we can talk about it in terms of like abuse. But I do think that has to be sorry. This is not about the Morse thing. This is about I'm thinking more about the Shahid Buttar thing. But like it is this mission creep again. It's like if people want to say I don't want to support this person because I think they're not nice or they're abusive in a hostile to their staffers abusive way, that's one thing. But there is this whole like it's like a sloppiness that we saw in this too, right? Where it's like, oh well, he was mayor and that's an abuse of power. Oh wait, the person didn't know he was mayor, but forget it. But that's okay because other people did know he was mayor, and he went to all these college Dems things, and it's like, well, no, he went to literally one, and they set him up. And again, I do think that it frustrates me. You know why it really frustrates me? Because I went to Wesleyan, and I get on a visceral level that feeling of like that like solidarity, like inclination, and you really do feel like you're doing the work and holding the space and honoring the person and their pain. And it just is complicated. Like we have to be rigorous about it as much as we would like to kind of, and again, you by default, you listen to the person and, you know, you look at all the, again, and with Me Too, a lot of this is because it's so hard to come forward and there's so many disincentives from coming forward. But whether it's a woman accusing someone of something, or in this case, it's like college Dems behind it, like we can't pretend that we can't like infantilize and lionize all women, for instance. Like women are varied, right? Like Margaret Thatcher was a woman. You know, it's like people have to remember that, you know, to kind of suggest that everyone's a saint and no one has ulterior motives or complicated motives or conflicting things is problematic in itself.
Of course, you know, the guys who, or some of the guys behind the letter were also gay, right?
Right.
Which doesn't mean that it's not
exactly.
homophobic tropes. Right. In fact, I think you could be opposed to this smear campaign precisely because it undermines Me Too, the seriousness of actual sexual assault, in addition to rehashing those homophobic tropes. You want to take seriously people's actual experiences of abuse, and
for sure.
This just really, I think, gets in the way of that.
I agree. Yeah, and then you have not that right wingers are paying attention to this, but the more stuff like this happens, I think the easier it is to dismiss this as overkill. Right? This movement just is too much.
Yes, but I actually was reading some of the Massachusetts coverage of it, and the conservative columnists in the Boston Herald are all over this, and they like. So they won't. These people who would never normally care about, you know, sexual assault or like or even power dynamics between humans, like I mean, are just like all over this. And so, I mean, one of the things that I think one reason it particularly troubles me in a political context on the left, this sort of thing always troubles me, honestly, because I just think that it's not healthy for our culture. I mean, like I do acknowledge that Harvey Weinstein was a serial rapist, and it was proven, and you know, and that there were many good things about the Me Too moment, but I do think that this kind of whenever we come to a mass consensus of condemnation, it's not necessarily a healthy habit. But it also particularly disturbs me in a left politics context because our side is so much more likely to throw our people under the bus for something like this than the right would. I mean, like, so the right, you know, will have like, you know, all these people like who are just, you know, utter pigs and have done actually very violence and condemnation, where things like Roy Moore stalking the little
Right.
girls at the mall, and I mean, and they will stand by their people. I mean, and we will just like, throw someone under the, like, like you saw, many actors on the left willing to throw this guy under
Right.
the bus for, like, I mean, adding people to his Instagram. I mean, it's just very, and then so it makes us much more vulnerable to these kinds of accusations and even fake stories. I mean, which hopefully we're able to self-correct from and learn from. But it's they certainly know where to hit us right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. He's like amazing, by the way. You'll see tomorrow or in other places. But when we release our interview, he comes from a poor background, not working class, not like, so many politicians are like, my family worked hard for the chance that, like, he's just very poor background.
Mm-hmm.
He does not, there's no talk of like, there's no meritocracy signaling.
Mm-hmm.
His parents didn't go to college. And he does not, he's like, was political from a young age, and he just like totally like found his own way. It's really a kind of a beautiful story. He's like a total nerd, like a self-made nerd. Yeah, it's just like really exciting. And he's not like it's fun. He went to Brown, and I think he teaches urban planning, but he's, I went to Wesleyan. It was very easy for me. It was like a very natural transition. Like he did not come from a background that kind of was like an automatic path to the world he entered. And he just does not, so many people who do that become kind of like Clintonite, like identity politics, extremely like bootstrapping without overtly embracing that language. And he's just like a total mensch. He's actually, this was not brought up in the interview, but he's half Jewish, which I only know because I was Googling stuff about him, and all these Israeli newspapers were like, Jewish congressional candidate in trouble over blah, 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 blah.
Oh my goodness.
It's so fun. Like the Times of Israel.
Yeah.
I know. Only Jews will like care more about pointing out that someone's Jewish than like the PR about it. Like they would.
What is it good for the Jews?
Well, exactly, yeah, but they care about, they're like, first Jewish publicity. Did you know that person's Jewish? And then they look into whether it's good for the Jews.
Is that why Wikipedia always contains the information whether someone is Jewish? Because I sometimes find it strange, because sometimes it's when that's not a part of the person's identity or anything at all. It just like happens to be true.
Yeah,
and they'll always have it in, and I always assumed it was anti-Semites that did
but it could be self-obsessed Semites,
because who would be so obsessed? But it must be.
Well, there is an interesting thing with the overlap between anti-Semites and Jews, and then there's another one between like lefty Jews who get the like Tikkun Olam, like social justice tradition of Jewishness, and the anti-Semites who think we're like a bunch of communists. And it's like, well, yeah, kind of we are.
Right.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. And what else? What are you guys working on now? What's next for you guys?
How about you, Greg?
Trying to finish this book. I was actually thinking of writing an op-ed about this.
You should.
See if it pans out. I thought, particularly as somebody who is a gay male college professor who does sometimes have sex with and date college aged, of course, college students can be of many ages, traditional college age students. I thought, I felt kind of personally, I took it a little personally, the whole story, and just kind of wanted to say, like, so what? Like, get a life, pretty much. I don't know if that'll take up a whole op-ed, but we'll see.
You're like, Greg Goldberg, get a life.
Yeah. No, you should. You definitely should.
I actually, not to sound like I'm being like a square, but I actually think that it is a good safety thing to put into place to not have. I mean, maybe you guys agree, but like I think that it is a good practice to not have professors date their students.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Their own students.
They're
own students.
Ill advised.
No, and I really don't know why people want to. I mean, I get that, like, you know, people have all kinds of desires, but like,
maybe wait till they graduate, or at least are out of your class.
I'm surprised that in this whole thing, by the way, that nobody pointed out how potent the professor fantasy is for people.
Right.
I'm like, this whole idea that the people that he would be talking to and having sex with are his victims is, I mean, not that that can't happen, obviously, but trust me that young people are very capable of expressing desires and fantasies related to you being in a position of power. Any gay person knows that this is true.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
Do you find that some people are looking for you specifically because you're a professor?
Yeah. I mean, I do. It's in my profile. I put it in my profile. To be honest, that the dynamic of professor-student isn't particularly erotic to me. Like,
me neither. I mean, I think
Liza's also a professor of journalism.
Yeah,
it's like email and office. None of it. It's like work, you know.
Yeah.
Grading.
You know, although I was a pretty deferential, reverent student myself, so I get why it could turn students on. But
I kind of wish I had as a student. It's not at all.
Yeah, on this end, it's not.
From the professor side, it's the opposite of hot. Yeah, but I do feel like, you know, I like probably should have as a student before it became, because like it was more acceptable back then.
Right. Yeah. And Greg, what were you telling me the other day? Oh yeah, you had what were you saying about Marx being homophobic or something?
Marx?
No, and you had Greg, you said that, like, and your professor was like, well, I'm bisexual, actually.
Oh my God. Horrible. Grad school. Just like a boring Marxist guy who was saying something homophobic in class. And then when I raised the issue, he came out as bisexual to the room. And I think we all just groaned and turned away and moved on to something else.
Right, because he had given you more information than you wanted to know about him at the same time, having said this homophobic thing.
Back away, Well, and then there's a whole thing about like how much you tell your students or talk about your personal life when you're teaching, all of that stuff. That's another issue, Or
I mean, sometimes I think that's, you know, I can always imagine getting in trouble for that, just being too much yourself in the classroom, talking too much you know, about yourself, or just like, you know, having an opinion that someone might take issue with, like those things all seem like, you know, in a time of moral panic you could be vulnerable for, but that particular mistake of having sex with your students is not something I would do or recommend. However, I think you're right, Greg. I think that the fact that part of the story, which wasn't that thing that he hadn't even done, but people have had to constantly sort of bring that up or clarify or ask about that, I think it does reveal how much people sort of do have that fantasy.
Yeah.
What
are you working on, Liza? I don't think you answered the question.
Oh, I didn't answer the question. And actually it's relevant because it was actually in a situation that has some parallels with this one. I'm reading and going to write about former Representative Katie Hill's new book.
Oh.
And so she had to resign. She was elected with all those other new congresswomen
Right.
in 2018, and she had to resign just a year later.
Post-thruple.
What?
Post-thruple.
Yes.
With a
She was in a
bong, right?
thruple.
Wasn't that part of the picture? Smoking a
What?
bong.
Smoking a bong? I just know there was a thruple involved, like 3 people couple.
There was a 3 people couple involved, and actually, so Greg, if she gets back into politics, she may be the open slutty politician that you're looking
I'm
for.
hoping, yes.
And that we're all hoping to see.
Yeah, but then she sucks because she's centrist. We can't have it all ever. She's like a performer. I think she's like, who else is like this? It's like someone who's it shows we're winning, but I don't think she's that progressive, but she like performs as progressive.
I know she's not really that progressive, but in this one area,
right? Yeah.
I mean, she was somebody she did have an openly slutty life, and she was really punished for it. But now she is, she has written this book, and she's speaking out.
I guess I should interview her, right? Because I reached out. Well, I shouldn't air dirty laundry or totally positive, sex positive laundry. I'm just kidding. But yeah, okay. So I'm gonna email her. I should have her on, right?
I think so. I mean, she is kind of centrist, but I think that if the left treated her kindly, maybe when she re-enters politics, she'll be more progressive. And a case in point, the Squad were the only ones who had her back.
There we go.
Isn't it going to happen eventually that like everyone is going to have had a youth where they've been photographed in various kinds of compromising situations, and people are just going to be like, whatever, it's boring. The scandal element gets old.
I mean, and women and queer people are so much more vulnerable to this. I mean, it is incredible how many, men have survived, straight men have survived their sex scandals and, just been just fine. And I think there's only one woman politician who didn't have, or a congressperson who didn't have to resign, and actually she's really right wing, Helen Chenoweth. Because again, the right wing are not as likely to throw their people under the bus. I mean, so even though Helen Chenoweth, she survived her scandal.
That's so funny.
But most women have to step down when this happens, and in her case, it was like just lurid, like revenge porn released by her ex-husband and given to a conservative website, and so just like pictures like that she did not even know were being taken. Yeah, so poor lady. So relevant to this discussion.
They're like, that's why.
Book, and I am thinking about like queers and women and political scandal.
Is it good?
I mean, the books that politicians. I mean, a politician can write a book and make even this situation boring.
Right. Yeah.
So that's just how they roll. But it is a pretty interesting topic.
I like the idea of right wing sex positive people. Like these Muslims, we got to kick them out because they don't accept our sex positive view. Like they're thruple-phobic.
Well, that's
Europe,
what
Trump.
Right?
Well, kind of. And Trump did that.
European, right?
Trump did do that. He was like, because they don't have any. They embrace their moral whatever. What would be called here moral depravity. It's not depravity, but it would be called that here. But Trump did that famously. Well, when I say famously, I mean I talk about it all the time. But in 2016 at the RNC, he was like, really like gay brothers, gay. LGBTQ, and Nando was there, and he saw the teleprompter, and it didn't say Q, it said LGBT, which is amazing because Trump added the Q. He was like, and that's why I'm going to protect all the LGBTQ men and women here from people who want to bring in a foreign lifestyle. That's
and he didn't miss a beat with the Q.
No.
It was a remarkable, it was just like really like, wow, this business of speaking the right language can be appropriated by even the most like monstrous.
I know. Yeah. He's such a good stand-up comedian. I think we first landed on that concept with you, Liza, when we were talking about your book about focus groups, Divining Desire.
Yes. Yeah. He is a stand-up comedian.
He really is. He works up the energy. I do like when he goes after he says something, he like looks around in the room.
God. Oh. I'm so tired of looking at his face.
I know, me too. Anything else you want to make sure that we say about anything about politics, sex, drugs, rock and roll, voting for Morse? I'm going to move to Massachusetts to vote for him.
Well, he sounds like a good guy.
He's a great guy.
And I'm glad it sounds like now his campaign can get back on track.
Seriously.
There's still a few more weeks.
Are there any polls that indicate where things are?
I don't know.
So the last I looked at, which I think they were there. I don't think there have been polls taken since this scandal happened, but before it happened, there was about a 10-point difference between Alex was about 10 points behind the opponent. But like some of these Justice Democrats type candidates have won with polling margins like that.
Cory Bush, right?
Yeah, so he really has a good chance, I think. I mean, if they have the same kind of momentum, and so something like this, I mean, it could really take the momentum out of your campaign if it went on too long. The nice thing is, I mean, if you remember in New York, our experience with Julia Salazar, where she had like so many more crazy scandals, none of them involving sex, but all of them crazy nonetheless. And the internet was just full of discourse about them, and the local newspapers all covered them, and there was like a new Julia scandal like every day. And when you went out to knock on doors for her, not a single person would even ask about that. You'd just be like, our candidate is concerned about affordable housing and tenants' rights and stuff like that, and people would be like, great, like, how do I vote for her? Where is my polling site? And not a single person brought up any of these scandals. So, I mean, that I think sometimes those of us that follow news very closely and work in the media and discuss things like this a lot, sometimes that we can overweight these kinds of media scandals. And a candidate with a good ground, I mean, not that there's a ground game right now, but a good phone bank game, and the ability
good grinder game.
Well, there's doesn't have
changing my profile.
Yeah, you should put his photo.
Very bad lack of game.
There's breaking news, by the way, which is that the college Dems have released a statement. Do you guys want to hear what it was?
Yes.
It's really pathetic.
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Let me just
call it up.
Calling it up. This is compliments of Owen Higgins. Hi, everyone. I know a lot has happened. Wait, can you guys see it? Okay,
yes.
Okay. Liza, you're going to excite some people with teacher fantasies. Hi, everyone. I know a lot has happened, and I know you all have a lot of questions. I'd like to take some time to clarify our actions and our motivations. I recognize that you will all... I know, right? I recognize that you will all be left with questions, and I'm happy to answer them. We wrote the letter to Alex Morse's campaign on the advice of legal counsel. What the fuck? After several students, more than the two who have been mentioned in various media coverage, came to us with legitimate concerns. Our letter was based on the concerns of this group of individuals who felt that there was a pattern of behavior that put college students in uncomfortable situations. These individuals helped us decide what to say and how to say it. The individual stories have not been shared because of the concern of the relevant individuals for their own safety, especially now that the story has become so large. While I cannot speak to anyone's motivations other than my own, I believe that we were acting in good faith to protect the individuals who felt that they were subject to inappropriate behavior. We condemn all homophobic attacks that have followed the publication of the article. While we believe that the concerns expressed by students were genuine, those concerns have been used to paint Morse in a way that plays into inappropriate stereotypes. That is unacceptable, and we want to make clear that we in no way condone that narrative or those attacks. I sincerely apologize for the harm that these homophobic responses have caused Morse and the greater LGBTQ plus community, and I apologize for the role that we played in that harm. As reported in Politico this morning, there will be an investigation by the Massachusetts Democratic Party. I intend to comply fully with this investigation. In addition, I am committed to honestly answering any questions from our membership to the best of my ability. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm happy to talk. Haley Fleming, CDMA President, College Democrats of Massachusetts President. Who the hell was their legal counsel, by the way? Sorry, what'd you say, Greg?
No reference to the allegations in the NSF base.
Nothing
whatsoever.
Yeah. Right. Mm-mm. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that there will be an investigation by the Massachusetts Democratic Party. I mean, I assume they're investigating the college Democrats for what they did. I mean, because these are some shenanigans.
Yeah. Brian Grimm writes, Mass College Dems in apology to Alex Morse say they wrote their letter to him on the advice. Who was that counsel? Seriously, Barney Frank or something? I don't know. He's a corrupt Massachusetts guy. I could so imagine. Barney Frank does more.
Barney Frank here.
I don't know, because he's Massachusetts, right? And he's honestly and gay and out, and also a total sellout. I actually think that Barney Frank has done a lot for like seeing a zhlub, like a gay man as zhlubby as Barney Frank is like a real teachable moment.
But Barney Frank has been in office since long before that kind of gay visibility made
he's terrible politically, but he's a trailblazer of being a sloppy zhlub.
He is a sloppy zhlub.
There's always those guys at the bathhouse. Let me tell you. Maybe not on the cover of Out or The Advocate, but they're around.
And he talks like this. Miss, you're talking to you. It's like talking to a chair. He's like, he's such a hot mess. Not hot mess, but just a hot mess. Yeah. Anyway, well, this was great. You guys should definitely come back on.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, this was really fun. And Greg, you should come and play some music. Play some music on.
That's what I should be working on.
Are you working on that?
I was at the beginning of the summer during the sort of heyday of quarantine, but
someone wrote Barney Frank's version of Grindr was swiping a cave. Oh, Brad Bloom wrote that, swiping a cave wall painting. It's kind of funny.
That's ageist.
That is ageist.
Ageist. I thought it was speciesist.
I love, by the way, how
he looks like a warthog or something. Yeah.
Let me say that describing Alex Morse, who's 31, as like an older gay man puts like this horror in my heart.
That's you with a walker.
He's
I know. I mean,
a kid.
It's amazing. Like it's amazing all the condemnation of him as creepy and older, and it's like I keep thinking, but this is really about a young guy and some even younger guy.
Yeah, and there's a lot of classism also built into it, right? Like if you don't show up with a partner, if you're not like Pete Buttigieg and Chasten.
I don't know how to say his name.
Chasten,
I don't know how to say his name.
Then you're like really, forget about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I will put links to your guys' Twitter handles and your work in the. Sorry, I'm looking for my shoes because I really have to go to the bathroom, so I'm trying to strategize.
Why do you need shoes for that?
Oh, because I have to run. It involves walk. I can't go to the bathroom without my shoes on. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah,
That's always my top priority.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a thing. All right, bye guys. This was great.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Katie.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Bye-bye.
Bye.